my sister made a bold declaration. Anyone who wanted to marry my brother would have to pay a $50 fee. She also told everyone, aside from being a little chubby, a little tan, and a little short, my brother is actually great husband material. Hearing this, her friends were completely turned off and avoided him like the plague. Then one day, a handsome, clean-cut young man appeared at a gala with Chloe, and at that moment, all her friends went wild. This is the brother you called a little chubby, a little tan, and a little short? It was all because Chloe was famously overprotective of her brother, afraid her friends would set their sights on me, so she always claimed I was short, ugly, and cheap. As a result, I hadn't dated anyone since becoming an adult, which worried my adoptive parents to no end. What kind of wife are you even looking for? Anyone who wants to marry my precious brother has to prove they can treat him better than I do. Back then, I was too busy burying my face in her embrace, so she never saw my blushing cheeks. She didn't know that she was the one I loved. My feelings for her were a social taboo, so I had always hidden them well, until they were discovered. That night, the woman who had spoiled me rotten slapped me for the first time. You have no shame. The very next day, she announced her engagement to my best friend. Don't forget to come to my wedding with Julian. After reading her message, I cried until I had no tears left. Just then, a call came from the family reunification agency, saying they had found my birth parents. And so, I made up my mind to leave her. I called my birth parents across the ocean. Mom, Dad, I'm willing to come live with you in the States. Hearing my words, my parents on the other end of the line were so emotional they started to cry. That's wonderful, Orion. If it weren't for that earthquake all those years ago, our family would never have been separated for so long. Mom and Dad are coming to bring you home now. A strange, bittersweet feeling washed over me. I took a deep breath to calm my surging emotions. Just give me 2 more weeks. I have some things to take care of here, and I'll come over once I'm done. Yes, of course, your father and I weren't thinking. After all, the Wilson family raised you for so many years, and we heard your sister doted on you since you were little. You should say a proper goodbye. My heart skipped a beat when they mentioned Chloe. When I was 6, a massive earthquake separated me from my parents, and I was eventually placed with the Wilsons for adoption. The Wilsons were a true old money family. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were always busy with their work, so while they adopted me, they didn't give me much attention. It would be more accurate to say I was raised by Chloe than by the Wilsons. When I was 7 and afraid of thunder, she would hold me and sing lullabies to help me sleep. When I was 10 and craved the snacks and toys my classmates had, she bought out the entire corner store, spoiling me into a little prince everyone envied. When I was 14 and fainted at home with a fever, it was she who ran up and down the stairs to get me hot water and personally fed me medicine bit by bit. Whatever I wanted, she would always be the first to present it to me. People here always teased her for being overprotective of her brother, but no one knew that over countless nights where we only had each other, I had long since fallen in love with Chloe. But I didn't dare confess, only secretly recording my feelings for her in my diary or confiding in my good friend, Julian. I never imagined that Julian would tell Chloe about it. That night, Chloe stormed into my room, her face grim, found that diary, and tore it to shreds. She threw the shredded pages at me, and before I could even speak, she slammed the door and left. After that, she did everything she could to avoid me. We never saw each other, and even on the rare occasion we crossed paths, her gaze was cold and merciless, as if looking at a stranger. I wanted to demand an explanation, but instead, I walked in on Chloe pinning Julian against a corner, kissing him passionately. I thought perhaps some things are just fated from the start. It was fated that Chloe and I could never be. It was fated that my years with the Wilsons were nothing but a fleeting dream. Now, it was time for me to return to my own path. So I made my decision. I would return to my real family and let go of my years of love for Chloe. That day, I went downstairs early. Seeing my adoptive parents warmly calling me over for breakfast, I smiled obediently, sat down beside them, and then told them that I had found my birth parents and decided to move to the States to be with them. That's wonderful news, Ethan. I'm so happy you found your real family. Have you told your sister yet? I froze. Should I tell Chloe? Her mind was completely occupied with Julian now. What difference would it make if I told her or not? What did you want to tell me? I whipped my head around and saw her standing in the doorway. It's nothing, Chloe. You're back. Hearing the title I hadn't used in so long, Chloe paused and gave me a deep look. When had I stopped calling her sis? Was it when I turned 18, 15, or even earlier? Now that I was calling her that again, Chloe's eyes darkened as she stared at me for a long moment, sensing that something about me had changed. After a while, she finally lowered her gaze and looked away. She walked over, placed the gifts she was carrying on the table, and said flatly, Mom, Dad, these are from Julian. He said it's just a small token, and he hopes you like them. We love them, we love them. Julian always picks such wonderful gifts. Did you thank him for us? Chloe, next time you visit the Sterlings, take that rare bottle of scotch from the cabinet with you. And if you're free this weekend, invite him and his parents over. It was obvious they were planning to discuss the wedding. I sat where I was, watching them in silence as a wave of loneliness washed over me. I dug my nails into my palm, then quickly released them. In that moment, I felt it with stark clarity once again. I was just an outsider. But soon, I wouldn't have to worry about these things anymore. With that thought, I calmly stood up and walked toward my room. Hearing the movement, Chloe, who was chatting with our parents, looked up just in time to see my back disappear behind the door. Was it my imagination? He had only said one sentence since he got home, which was so unlike his usual self. In the afternoon, I took my documents to the county clerk's office to file the paperwork to change my name. As I came down the stairs, I saw Julian sitting next to Chloe, watching with a smile as she peeled an orange. Chloe's slender fingers deftly removed the peel, meticulously picked off the white pith, and then held half a slice to Julian's lips. Julian's cheeks flushed as he glanced at her before obediently taking the orange slice from her fingers with his lips. Chloe let out a soft laugh, pulled a napkin from the box nearby, and gently wiped the corner of his mouth. "Is it sweet?" Julian nodded, then offered a piece to Chloe. "You have some too." Watching their intimate display, I quietly averted my gaze and headed for the door. "Ethan." I turned back to see him waving at me. "Chloe has the day off, and we were planning to go to the park. Do you want to come with us? You two are on a date. I shouldn't intrude. We're all family. It's not intruding at all. I have some errands to run. Maybe next time." Hearing me refuse again, the smile on Julian's face instantly stiffened. "Ethan, are you still mad at me for stealing your sister? Is that why you don't want to hang out with us?" Chloe chuckled softly and threw herself into his arms. "You were always the one I liked. How could it be stealing?" Her words made Julian's ears turn red. "If he doesn't want to go, then don't force him. Let him be." "Yes, let me be and we'll go our separate ways." I politely said goodbye to them both and turned to leave. After updating my legal records, I left the clerk's office and went to the racing club. One entire wall of the office was covered with our trophies and photos from various competitions. I looked at it all, my eyes filled with emotion and a sense of loss. I never expected the farewell to come so suddenly. My coach walked in from outside and patted my shoulder. Looking at the man who had trained me for 10 years, the reluctance I had just suppressed swelled up in my throat again. I pinched the palm of my hand and took a deep breath. "Coach, I'm moving to the States. My birth parents found me, and I want to go live with them." "That's great news. Will you keep racing over there?" "Racing has always been my dream. I won't just give it up. I'll definitely continue." "Are you leaving right away? The biggest national race is about to start, and you have a real shot at winning the championship this time." "I've already talked it over with my parents. I'll handle things here first. I still have 2 weeks, which is just enough time to compete in this race." My coach finally relaxed and patted my shoulder again. I chatted with him for a while longer, and it was late by the time I picked up my bag and headed home. When I pushed the door open, I found Julian was still there. Listening closely, I realized they were discussing wedding plans. All these suits and wedding dress styles are making my head spin. I was thinking of asking Ethan for his opinion. Since we've been best friends for so many years, he knows my taste. I walked in just as he said that. "Ethan, your future brother-in-law is stressing out over this. Why don't you help him pick out wedding supplies for the next few days?" I looked at Julian, who had a smile playing on his lips, but the moment our eyes met, that smile turned into a taunt. I lowered my gaze, thought for a moment, and then declined. "Sorry, I don't have time. I'm busy at the club, and I only have 2 weeks left. I have a lot to wrap up before I leave, so I can't go shopping with Julian." But as soon as the words left my mouth, the atmosphere grew heavy. "Your best friend is getting married. Can't your things wait?" "It's settled. I'll call the club tomorrow and get you the time off." If she was going to use her authority to force my hand, what right did I have to refuse? Hearing that, a bitter smile touched my lips, and I said nothing more. For the next few days, I had to put everything aside and dedicate my time to helping Julian pick out things for the wedding. I thought he would just pick a few things at a department store, but he dragged me all over the city, from downtown to uptown. From something as big as the wedding dress to something as small as a wine glass, he insisted I make the final call. Whenever I suggested he send someone to ask Chloe, he would complain, "Why ask your sister? That busy woman doesn't know anything except how to give me money. You're the one who understands me." Last time I asked her to help me pick out wedding rings, she just had an entire case of them sent to my house and told me to choose whatever I wanted. He was complaining to me, but his eyes were filled with an unconcealable pride. I listened in silence, not giving him the reaction he expected. Just as Julian was about to say something else, he caught sight of a woman in the doorway. "Chloe, what are you doing here?" I looked up and saw him run over and throw himself into Chloe's arms. "Weren't you going to the monastery in Hudson Valley to pray? I took a half day off to come get you. Ethan has been helping me these past few days. Why don't you come with us?" Chloe didn't even glance at me. She just picked up the shopping bags and started walking out. With the distant tolling of bells, the thick fog began to dissipate, revealing the mountain scenery outside the monastery. I kept my head down, carefully watching the stone path under my feet as I walked. "What's this?" A sudden voice broke my train of thought. I looked up to see Julian standing in front of a Bodhi tree, studying the wishing ribbons tied to its branches. May my Ethan be happy every year, and may each year be better than the last. May my Ethan have a life full of blessings, free from illness and misfortune, and may all he meets be kind. For my boy Ethan, may he be safe day and night, year after year. From a believer, Chloe. I stared at those ribbons, my heart trembling as my thoughts drifted far away. Because of the earthquake, my health had always been frail. I was always getting sick. To help me get better, Chloe would come to this monastery every week to hang a wishing ribbon for me, praying for my health and safety. I never realized she had hung so many over the years. The ribbons were still on the tree, but Chloe and I could never go back to how we were. You two are so close. It makes me feel like a third wheel. Julian couldn't read anymore, his face hardening as he turned to leave. Don't be silly. What third wheel? You're my fiancé and he's just my brother. If you're unhappy, I'll have someone take these down. With that, Chloe turned and ordered her assistant to tear all the wishing ribbons from the tree. One by one, the ribbons fell to the ground, where they were carelessly trampled and stained with mud. Soon, the tree was filled with new ribbons, all covered with loving words Chloe had written for Julian. Julian's smile returned, and he shot me a triumphant look. Won't Ethan be angry that you did this? A brother is hardly as important as a husband. That was all it took to make Julian happy again. On the way back to the city, he clung to Chloe the entire time. I was sitting in the back with my eyes closed, about to rest, when the car suddenly accelerated. I opened my eyes, and just as I was about to ask what was happening, a deafening crash echoed in my ears. The car had lost control, smashed through the guardrail, and rolled several times before getting wedged in a ravine. My head slammed hard against the seat in front of me, and my vision went black. When I came to, I found myself pinned in my seat, a sharp branch impaled in my arm. Beside me, Julian was also unconscious. He looked unharmed, likely having just fainted from the shock. Chloe in the driver's seat reacted quickly, breaking a window and climbing out of the car. She stumbled a few times before steadying herself, glanced at me, who was breathless with pain, and then at the unconscious Julian. After only a moment's hesitation, she hoisted Julian onto her back. I'm taking Julian first. I'll send someone back for you later. Without another look at my expression, she hurried away with Julian on her back, as if terrified that something might happen to him. The moment I decided to give up on her, I told myself I would never cry for her again. From then on, I would live only for myself. But as I lay there alone, trapped by the car in the ravine, I couldn't help but remember the earthquake. I had been buried in the rubble then, too, with nothing but darkness around me. I was trapped for 3 days and 3 nights. After the Wilsons adopted me, I would dream of the earthquake every single night, waking up trembling and crying under the covers. Back then, Chloe would always rush into my room and hold me tight. Don't be scared, sweetie. I'm here. I'll never let anything hurt you ever again. But now, I watched her walk further and further away until she completely vanished from sight. The sky grew darker, but Chloe never came back for me. I gave a bitter smile and, with my last ounce of strength, ignored the pain and managed to crawl out from under the wreckage. Gritting my teeth, I yanked the branch out of my arm and began to crawl, inch by inch, toward the road. I don't know how long I crawled, but I finally made it to the pavement before passing out completely. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed with my arm heavily bandaged. My last memory was of being rescued by a kind passerby. From the moment I was admitted, Chloe hadn't come to see me once. A nurse told me she was taking care of Julian. He only had minor injuries, yet she had rented out an entire hospital floor just so he could rest in peace. Hearing this, I instinctively looked down at my bandaged arm. I remembered the time I was hospitalized for a simple cold, and Chloe had acted just like this, treating it like a major crisis and never leaving my side. On the day I was discharged, many friends came to pick me up, including a girl who used to have a crush on me. Seeing the bouquet of flowers she offered, I instinctively moved to refuse, but she stammered, "Ethan, don't get the wrong idea. These are just to celebrate you getting out of the hospital. I know you're leaving soon, and I just wanted to wish you all the best." I was taken aback for a moment before thanking her. But as I turned around, I saw Chloe standing in the doorway. I rarely saw her angry, but now her face was a mask of fury, her eyes like ice as she stared at the flowers in my hand before turning and walking away. I was stunned and confused, not understanding what she was so angry about, but I didn't dwell on it and put the flowers in a vase as soon as I got home. Suddenly, there was a knock on my door. I steadied myself against the wall and slowly went to open it. The door opened to reveal Chloe's face. Ever since she found out about my feelings, our relationship had turned ice cold, and she had never once knocked on my door. What was she doing here now? I had just started to speak when Chloe suddenly threw her arms around me. The unexpected embrace made me stumble back several steps. The next morning, as I came out of the guest room, I saw Chloe walking towards me with a frown. "Why was I in your room?" Seeing that she had no memory of last night, I was about to speak when she cut me off coldly. "Did you bring me in there? Ethan, I've told you it's impossible between us. Besides, I'm getting married. Haven't you given up yet?" I froze, then lowered my head and said nothing. What was the point of explaining? My love for her was the original sin. In her eyes, everything I did now was wrong. Seeing me with red-rimmed eyes, looking down in silence, Chloe's breathing deepened slightly. Just as she was about to step closer, a gentle male voice called from outside. "Chloe." He walked in, and as he was about to smile and put his arm around her, his smile froze. "What happened to the corner of your lip?" "It's nothing, probably a mosquito bite." She subconsciously touched her lip, then gave me a long, deep look. For the next while, I didn't see Chloe alone again. She was busy with Julian, and I had to focus on my training. One day, as I was at the racetrack preparing to get in my car, my coach suddenly walked over with Chloe and Julian. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce a new driver, personally recommended by Ms. Wilson, Julian Sterling. Let's give him a warm welcome." Amid the applause, my coach looked at me on the edge of the group and said, "Ethan, I want you to show Julian the ropes." After the introductions, the coach respectfully led Chloe and Julian away to handle the paperwork. The moment the door closed, the room erupted in murmurs. I heard Julian tried to join our club before but didn't make the cut because his skills weren't good enough. Leave it to Ms. Wilson. All it took was one word from her, and he just waltzes right in. And we had to fight tooth and nail to get in. Some people just have it easy. The envious comments continued, and for a moment, my focus blurred. No one knew Chloe better than I did. She was aloof and principled, always a stickler for the rules, and despite her power, she had never used her privilege. But now, she had made an exception for Julian. It seemed she really did love him. From then on, Julian was part of the club, and I became his senior mentor. I took my coach's words to heart and tried to teach him seriously, but Julian was rebellious. He was always half-hearted and would find a new excuse every day to skip training. This time, before I could stop him, he had already disappeared. I went to the window to call after him, only to see Chloe waiting outside. I didn't look any longer, calmly closing the window and returning to my training. I got home very late and saw Chloe standing at the main gate. Her expression was dark and unreadable, and it looked like she was waiting for me. I had just walked over to ask what was wrong when she questioned me coldly. "Ethan, can you stop targeting Julian? If you don't like him, just say so." I was already exhausted, and her words sent a wave of complex emotions crashing over me. Injustice, sadness, helplessness. I didn't need to guess what kind of stories Julian had been spinning for her. I didn't explain, I just walked past her and went to my room. After that, I became much more lenient with Julian, which only made him more arrogant. He would just show up at the club to check in and then leave immediately. Others were indignant and wanted to confront him, but I held them back, shaking my head. It was Julian's life. If he failed the evaluations, he would be forced to leave. He had to be responsible for his own choices. Besides, I no longer had the time to teach him. I thought that would be the end of it, but I never expected Chloe to suddenly seek me out. "I'm giving my spot in the upcoming race to Julian." At first, I didn't process what she said. It was only when she asked again if I was willing that I looked up at her, my eyes filled with a cold fury. "You're telling me to give my spot to him?" I tried my best to control my emotions, but I couldn't hide the tremor in my voice. "He's your future brother-in-law, after all. Besides, it's just one race spot. Is it really that important?" "Chloe, you know exactly what racing means to me." Chloe's heart felt as if it had been squeezed by an iron fist. She seemed to remember all those years, all the times I had pushed myself to the limit for racing. Her hand clenched tightly, but in the end, she said nothing more and silently turned to leave. Ever since Julian joined the club on Chloe's word, it had gradually split into two factions. One was led by me, full of drivers who were fighting for their goals. The other was led by Julian, full of people who neglected their training and spent their days trying to curry favor with him, hoping he'd put in a good word for them with Chloe to get some perks. The two factions had never clashed directly until after training today. "Ethan, there's something I don't quite get. Can you teach me?" I instinctively frowned, and just as I was about to speak, one of Julian's followers suddenly shoved me. "What's your problem? Our Julian is kindly asking for help, and you give him this attitude. What's your problem?" I'd like to ask what Julian's intentions are. He had all that time during practice to ask, but he waits until it's over. Is he doing this on purpose? I didn't want to start a fight, so I pulled my friend back, but the guys opposite us took it as a sign of fear and their words grew uglier. "Scared now? Let me tell you, our Julian is the future lead driver. Ethan, it's an honor for you to be able to teach him. He's just an orphan. If you piss Julian off, watch out, or she'll have you kicked out." As they spoke, someone threw the first punch, and in an instant, the two groups were brawling. In the chaos, Julian suddenly came up beside me and gave me a hard shove. I was already standing at the edge of a high platform, and just as I was about to fall, I grabbed Julian and pulled him down with me. We both fell from the platform, and the area erupted in screams and confusion. By the time Chloe arrived, we were being wheeled into the operating room. Seeing the state we were in, her face went pale, and her usually calm voice held a trace of panic. "What's the situation?" "Ms. Wilson, both Mr. Harrison and Mr. Sterling fell from the platform and have broken both their legs. Mr. Harrison's condition is more severe as Mr. Sterling landed on top of him. There's only one dose of the advanced medication for treating these fractures. Mr. Sterling will recover without it, but, you see, give it to Julian. Before the doctor could finish, Chloe cut him off, her tone absolute. Hearing her decisive tone, I, who had just regained consciousness from the pain, felt like I'd been struck by lightning. She knew perfectly well how important a racer's legs are. But the doctor clearly said Julian's legs would be fine without the medication. I fought back a groan of pain and, with my last bit of strength, cried out, begging, Chloe, no, I'm begging you, please give the medicine to me. It's okay if you don't like me. It's okay that you left me in that ravine all night, but you know how important my legs are to me. I can't lose my legs. I still have my dream. Please. By the end, I was sobbing uncontrollably. Large, crystalline tears rolled down my pale cheeks. Seeing the boy who never cried, no matter how badly he was hurt, now breaking down like this, Chloe's hands, hanging at her sides, clenched into fists. Just as she was about to speak, Julian, who had been unconscious, was jolted awake by the pain. Remembering the agony in his legs as he fell, he too began to cry in terror. Chloe, my legs hurt so much, please help me. At his words, Chloe shook off my hand and rushed over to take Julian's. Sure, it's okay. I'll have the doctor give you the special medicine right now. Without any further hesitation, she urged the doctor to administer the drug to Julian. Seeing this, I desperately tried to push myself up and reach for the syringe in the doctor's hand, but my broken legs were a dead weight, pinning me down. The cold needle pierced Julian's skin, and I could only watch as the medicine slowly entered his body. 3 days later, I finally woke from my coma. This time, Chloe was sitting by my bedside. She looked exhausted, her eyes bloodshot. When she saw I was awake, she reached out a trembling hand to help me up, but I turned away, avoiding her touch. Chloe's hand froze in mid-air. After a long moment, she finally pulled it back. Her voice was hoarse as she said, Your legs will heal enough for you to walk normally, but you won't be able to race anymore. It doesn't matter. I'll take care of you from now on. Julian is my fiancé. I couldn't just abandon him. I should have felt so many things. Anger, despair, sorrow, pain. I should have screamed. But all those emotions piled up inside me until all that was left was a profound sense of powerlessness. Please, get out. The room fell into a long silence. Finally, Chloe stood up, left me with a quiet, get some rest, and slipped out the door. The moment the door closed, I finally looked down at my injured legs and let myself cry without restraint. My dream of racing had been utterly crushed into dust. After the doctor declared I could never race again, I became a walking shell, no longer crying or laughing, just sitting in a chair and staring blankly out the window. On the day of the race, I ignored the Wilsons' objections and went to the racetrack, taking a seat in the very last row. I looked out at the track and watched Julian, using my entry spot, step onto the field to the applause and flowers that should have been mine. After the race, Chloe went up to him with a bouquet of flowers, and everyone else crowded around to congratulate him. I was the only one who remained seated, silently watching the crowd gather and then disperse. I don't know how much time passed before I finally stood up and walked over. Seeing me approach, Chloe instinctively stepped in front of Julian. If you're going to be angry, take it out on me. Don't hurt him. I'm not angry. I'm here to give you a gift. My words sent a small shock through everyone present. Follow me. With that, I walked out of the stadium. The moment they stepped outside, a firework shot into the sky and burst open, its sparkling petals raining down. One after another, fireworks lit up the night. A flicker of shock crossed Chloe's eyes, and in the next second, she heard me say, Chloe, do you remember the day I won my first race? You set off a whole sky of fireworks for me. You said you wished that for the rest of my life, I would shine brightly and be as free as the wind. Now, I'm giving these fireworks back to you. I wish you and my brother-in-law a lifetime of happiness together. The moment the words brother-in-law left my lips, Chloe's pupils contracted, and she instinctively looked at me. It was the first time I had ever called Julian brother-in-law in public. Her heart suddenly tightened, but before she could speak, I had already turned and walked away. On the eve of the wedding, the Wilson house was in a frenzy. Late at night, the downstairs was brightly lit as Mrs. Wilson directed the staff in decorating the bridal suite. Upstairs, a single light was on in my room. I sat on the floor, placing every gift Chloe had given me over the years into a large box, one by one. After packing them all away, I carried the stack of boxes and slowly made my way downstairs. In the dead of night, the house was filled with festive decorations, each one a silent reminder that a new master was about to arrive. I didn't spare the scene another glance as I carried the boxes toward the door. Just then, I ran right into Chloe, who was returning from the Sterling's house. What are you doing with that? Getting rid of some things I don't need. Watching my retreating back, devoid of any hesitation, she felt an inexplicable tightness in her chest. I had been like a different person ever since the accident. She had expected me to throw tantrums and cause scenes after losing my ability to race, but instead, I was calm, terrifyingly so. I turned to look at her, and a moment later she said, Julian said he wants you to be his best man. He's my brother-in-law now, not my friend. It's not appropriate for someone of my generation to take that role. You should find someone else. With that, I looked away from her and walked out the door. It wasn't that I was inappropriate. It was that, on their wedding day, I would be gone. The night before the wedding, I went to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, holding a box. Mom, Dad, I won't be able to attend the wedding tomorrow. My birth parents booked me a flight for tomorrow morning. I'm leaving then. Why so sudden? It's not sudden. I should have left a long time ago. Inside the box was all the money I had saved over the years, an amount that was just enough to repay the Wilsons for everything they had spent on me for the past 15 years. I smiled and shook my head, pulling a thick envelope from my pocket and handing it to them. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson immediately shook their heads, trying to push the money back to me, but I firmly refused. Please, you must take it. Then, I knelt on the floor and bowed deeply and solemnly 3 times. Dad, Mom, thank you for your care and kindness these past 15 years. I will never forget the debt I owe you for raising me. I won't be able to be by your side anymore, so I wish you both good health and long lives. When I looked up, there were tears in my eyes and a faint red mark on my forehead. On the wedding day, Chloe was supposed to be getting ready for the ceremony, but she hadn't moved, instead pacing back and forth in front of my room. Staring at my closed door, Chloe's heart suddenly ached. She had a feeling she couldn't leave, that if she did, she would lose something incredibly important. Chloe, what's wrong? I opened my door to find her standing right there. The distance and coldness in my eyes made her heart pound. Why don't you come with me? I paused. Go with her to do what? To watch her and Julian flaunt their love? I instinctively glanced at my watch. I don't have time for that. I have something to take care of, but I'll meet you at the venue later. Chloe was about to say more, but Mrs. Wilson called for her from downstairs. Chloe, you're going to be late. Caught between my refusal and her parents' urging, Chloe still hesitated to leave. It wasn't until their calls grew more insistent that she finally suppressed the panic rising in her chest. Before the ceremony starts, come find me. I have something to tell you. I didn't respond, just kept my gaze lowered. But Chloe seemed to need an answer, repeating herself, it's very important. You have to come find me. Seeing that she wouldn't leave without my confirmation, I had no choice but to lie and nod. Okay, I will. That finally seemed to reassure her. She dropped her hand from the doorframe and turned to go. I watched her go downstairs and get into the wedding car, followed by everyone else getting into the cars behind it. Finally, the ceremonial cannons fired, and the motorcade drove away, growing smaller and smaller in my vision until it disappeared completely. Chloe, congratulations on your wedding, and goodbye forever. With that, I picked up the suitcase I had packed long ago, went downstairs and walked out the door, heading step by step toward the airport. My back was resolute. I never looked back. The wedding between the Sterling and Wilson families was the biggest news in New York City. Crowds gathered early along the parade route, waiting for the Wilsons to toss out wedding favors. Words of blessing filled the air, but inside the car, Chloe felt inexplicably unhappy. She remembered the way her heart had pounded violently while standing at my door that morning, and a sense of panic began to creep in again, a feeling that she had missed something crucial. Because the Wilsons held a higher social standing than the Sterlings, Chloe herself was the one leading the procession to pick up the groom. The Wilsons didn't care for old traditions. They just wanted the public to know that it was the Sterlings' good fortune that Chloe was marrying Julian. Their daughter was marrying down, not climbing the social ladder for a strategic alliance. The Sterling residence was equally festive, adorned with celebratory silks and decorations. Julian's groomsmen stood on the balcony, watching for the arrival of the Wilson motorcade. Finally, as the clock struck 11, the line of cars appeared in the distance. The men excitedly rushed to Julian's side. She's here. She's here. Ms. Wilson is here. After some celebratory fanfare, Chloe finally made her way upstairs with the bouquet and entered Julian's room. Seeing her there in her wedding dress, Julian couldn't contain his excitement. He was finally marrying Chloe. After some playful banter, Chloe and Julian got into the wedding car and headed to the reception venue. Along the way, Julian kept studying Chloe. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but it seemed like she had been distracted ever since she arrived. He reached out and gently tugged on her dress. Chloe, what's wrong? Is something on your mind? You don't seem very happy. I was just so nervous about getting married today that I couldn't sleep all night. Julian didn't think much more of it and gently put his arm around her shoulder. The car stopped in front of the hotel, and the two went into the bridal suite to rest. After talking for a while, Chloe finally got up and left the room. Remembering what she had said to me that morning, she quickly summoned the butler and told him to bring me to her. But as she waited for me to arrive, her mind suddenly went blank. What was she going to say to me? That Julian was my brother-in-law now, and no matter how I felt, I shouldn't show it in front of him? That I could still live at home after Julian moved in and wouldn't have to leave? That in her heart, I was still her brother? She rehearsed many different lines, imagining how she would start the conversation when she saw me. But when she saw the butler return alone, all her prepared words turned to panic. "Where's Ethan?" The butler opened his mouth, unsure of what to say. When Chloe had sent him to find me, he had run into Mr. and Mrs. Wilson on the stairs. After hearing his purpose, they had exchanged a look. By their calculations, I should have been on a plane by now. The wedding was about to start, and if Chloe went looking for me, she would surely discover something was wrong and delay the ceremony. So they told the butler to lie to Chloe, to say that my leg injury was acting up and I had to go home to rest. To make the lie convincing, they even produced a note I had written in the past but never given her. It was in my handwriting and said, "I'm not feeling well, I went home early." Chloe took the note, her brow furrowed, feeling that something was off. Just as she was about to speak, the officiant reminded her, "The ceremony is about to begin, the bride needs to get ready." Chloe pulled back the foot she had been about to extend and headed toward the main hall. The butler watched her go, silently letting out a breath of relief. The elegant sound of a piano filled the air as Chloe looked at Julian at the end of the aisle and slowly began to walk toward him. Julian's face was beaming with a smile he couldn't hide, but for some reason, a thought suddenly crossed her mind. What would I look like in a groom's suit? I was always mischievous, so I probably wouldn't wear a traditional tuxedo, but something in my favorite black and gold. And I wouldn't just wait for her at the altar like Julian. I would walk briskly toward her, not with a shy smile like his, but with a broad, confident grin, and then intimately take her arm. Perhaps she was too lost in her fantasy, because when the officiant asked if she was willing to marry the groom before her, she subconsciously said my name. The microphone was still in her hand, and the speakers broadcast her voice throughout the entire hall. The guests were first stunned, then began to whisper amongst themselves. "Isn't Ethan the Wilsons' adopted son? Why did Ms. Wilson say his name?" In the front row, the parents of both families froze, their faces stiff. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson stared at her, growing more anxious by the second. How could their daughter make such a mistake at a critical moment like this? Mr. and Mrs. Sterling's faces darkened, and they turned to the Wilsons, demanding an explanation. On the stage, hearing Chloe say my name, Julian's face went white. He gripped his trousers tightly, his voice trembling as he asked, "Chloe, what are you talking about?" He reached for her hand instinctively. They were just one step away from being husband and wife. Why would she say Ethan's name? In the past, Chloe would have quickly recovered and brushed off the incident as a minor slip-up. But now, she just stared out at the guests below. Some faces were strange, some familiar, but the one she was searching for was nowhere to be found. The next moment, ignoring the calls from the crowd, she bolted from the stage and ran for the exit. Countless people shouted her name, some in anger, some in sorrow, some in despair, but she didn't look back, fleeing the wedding venue. Julian instinctively started to chase after her, but his vision suddenly went black, and he collapsed to the floor. The scene descended into chaos. Chloe jumped into her car, slammed on the accelerator, and sped toward the Wilson mansion. She remembered the look in my eyes that morning, the yellowed note the butler had given her, the guilt in his expression, and a terrible premonition washed over her. The car screeched to a halt in front of the house, and before it had even fully stopped, she was running inside. She took the 2 flights of stairs in a matter of seconds. She rushed to my room and threw open the door. The room was empty. All of my belongings were gone. Chloe's face went rigid as she grabbed a passing maid. "Where is my brother?" "The young master left with his suitcase early this morning," the startled maid replied. The terrible feeling in Chloe's gut intensified. She pushed the maid aside and started to rush downstairs, only to run into Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, who had just returned in a fury. "Stop right there." Chloe struggled, trying to get away, but in her haste, she slipped and tumbled down the stairs. Seeing this, Mr. Wilson's eyes rolled back, and he nearly fainted. What was supposed to be a joyous day had turned into a complete farce. The Wilsons rushed Chloe to the hospital, where a doctor unexpectedly informed them that she was 1 month pregnant. When the Sterlings heard the news, they joyfully gathered around Chloe's hospital room. They had thought the marriage alliance was completely ruined, but this was an unexpected silver lining. Chloe was carrying a Sterling heir. She wouldn't be able to get away now. The happiest of all was Julian. He never imagined fate would be so kind as to give him a child at such a critical moment. When Chloe woke up, she found everyone gathered around her, treating her like a precious, fragile object. "Chloe, you're pregnant now, you can't take any risks. Now that you're awake, you should apologize to Julian. You running out of the wedding has caused all sorts of gossip about him." But Chloe wouldn't have it. She had to find me. She had to know where I had gone. She sat up in bed, ready to go look for me, but Mr. Wilson gave her no chance, waving his assistants forward to restrain her. But she evaded their grasp, enraging her father. "Rebellious girl, what on earth are you trying to do? You're pregnant. You can't just run around like this." "Where did Ethan go?" she asked, her eyes red and her voice pleading. Remembering what the maid had said, Chloe's heart began to race. "Why are you asking about that? The most important thing for you to do right now is come with me to apologize to the Sterlings." When her father wouldn't answer, Chloe tried to walk past him. "Grab her." A group of people swarmed her, forcing her in front of Julian. "Do you have any idea what day it is? You ran out on your own wedding. How do you expect the Sterling and Wilson families to show their faces? Chloe, if you didn't want to marry my son, you should have just said so. Why humiliate our family like this? How is my son supposed to live this down? Chloe clenched her fists, her lips pressed together in silence. Just then, the door to the room opened, and a pale-faced Julian emerged, supported by his mother. Mrs. Sterling paid him no mind, rushing to catch up with her son. Look at the state he's in. Why did you run away from your wedding to find Ethan? Recalling her daughter's strange behavior all day, an impossible thought began to form in Mrs. Wilson's mind. Chloe's fists tightened, unsure of what to say. How could she explain? At first, she had wanted to find me to tell me to treat Julian as a brother-in-law from now on. But when she found out I was gone, her heart was consumed by panic. She wanted to find me, but what then? Suddenly, images of me flashed through her mind. Happy, sad, broken, and that look of relief on my face this morning. Gradually, these images merged into the memory of me mustering the courage to confess to her after she found my diary. Chloe, I love you. A wave of realization washed over her, and she instinctively placed a hand over her heart. Did you go looking for Ethan because you suddenly realized you're in love with him? As a woman who had been through it all, seeing her daughter in this state, that impossible thought became a certainty. In the past, Chloe would have denied it instantly. But today, not seeing me at the wedding, not finding me at home, she had been so panicked that she needed to find me immediately. The love she had buried so deep long ago had broken through the surface and grown into a towering tree. He's your brother. How could you have feelings like that? The words she herself had once said were now being repeated by her mother 3 years later. A wave of sorrow washed over her as she finally understood just how deeply those words could cut. It was just a crush, a secret love, never even spoken aloud. Even if you do love him, it's no use. Ethan has already gone to the States to find his birth parents. He's never coming back. Ethan found his birth parents? Why didn't anyone tell me? Why was it kept from me? Do you really not know what you've done? Chloe's face went pale. She remembered everything she had done over the past month to please Julian, tearing down the wishing ribbons she had hung for me, leaving me alone in that ravine, and even giving the only dose of the special medicine to Julian, ensuring I could never race again. Her face grew paler and paler, and she stumbled, nearly falling to the ground. The world around her blurred, and all she could hear was the chaotic thumping of her own heart and her ragged breaths. I don't care what you thought before. You're married to Julian now, and you're going to be a mother. Put those old ideas away and build a proper life with him. Although Chloe had run out of the wedding, everyone, including both the Sterling and Wilson families, now considered Julian the Wilson's son-in-law. Chloe opened her mouth to say something, but her vision went black, and she collapsed. When she woke up again, she saw Julian sitting beside her, his face streaked with tears. The day's events had dealt him a massive blow. A wedding is one of the most important moments in a person's life, but the woman he loved had run away for someone else. How was he supposed to face the world after this? On top of that, he had fainted at the wedding, Chloe had been found to be pregnant, and the doctor had just told him that due to the immense stress she was under, she might not be able to carry the baby to term. Thinking of this, he cried even more bitterly, and his hatred for me grew deeper. Growing up, he could never measure up to me in anything. Although the Sterling and Wilson families were of similar status, his parents were still envious of the Wilsons and forced him to curry favor with me, hoping to gain some advantage. Everything the Sterlings owned was meant for his younger brother. He had nothing, not even a choice in who he married, as his wife had to be someone who could benefit his brother's future. At first, his parents had chosen a divorced, hot-tempered heiress for him. It was only after he threw a massive fit that they finally gave up on the idea. To prevent them from trying something similar again, he had to take matters into his own hands. Coincidentally, that was when I secretly told him that I was in love with Chloe. Even though he knew I was just the Wilsons' adopted son, such a thing would be seen as completely unethical by outsiders. So he immediately went and told Chloe. His original intention was just to crush my fantasy of climbing the social ladder, but he never expected that Chloe, in her determination to sever my feelings, would ask him to act along with her. Naturally, he seized the opportunity. After all, Chloe was a far better prospect than the woman his parents had chosen for him. So he put on a show, crying and pretending to have her best interests at heart, and Chloe fell for it. One thing led to another, and they ended up getting married. But who would have thought that Chloe would run away from their wedding for me, humiliating him in the process? His parents were furious with him for not being able to hold on to Chloe, but in front of the Wilsons, they played the victim to make them feel even more guilty. In the past, Chloe would have pulled him into her arms and comforted him, but now she just stared blankly at the ceiling. This made Julian even more resentful. He knew they had only gotten together because Chloe wanted to use him to make me give up and stay away from her. But now, he had given her everything, they were married, and she was still thinking about me. Chloe! She shot him a cold look. His face paled, and just as he was about to speak, Chloe glanced down at her stomach. The doctor had just told her she was a month pregnant, but she had always been careful, except for that one time after the car crash in the ravine, when she was comforting Julian and hadn't taken precautions. Just that once. If I were still here, maybe having this child wouldn't be so bad. But now that I was gone, there was no need for it. Both Julian and this baby were just tools Chloe had used to make me give up on her. Moreover, now that she was certain of her feelings for me, she definitely couldn't keep this child. I'm getting an abortion. Those 4 words made Julian leap to his feet. But before he could speak, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson burst into the room. Mr. Wilson berated Chloe until he was so worked up that he fainted. Meanwhile, after being picked up by the people my parents sent, I arrived in Washington, D.C. and immediately saw my birth parents waiting at the arrival's gate, holding flowers and looking around nervously. I look a lot like my mother. After 15 years apart, the 3 of us held each other in a tight embrace, sobbing. My mother wiped her tears away, but as she looked at me, fresh ones started to fall. After we got home, she held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go. Sweetheart, your father and I originally named you Orion. It's okay, Mom, let's use Orion. I've already cut ties with the Wilsons, so I'm not one of them anymore. It's only natural that I take my birth parents' name. My mother nodded excitedly, then her gaze fell to my legs. Orion, do you want to continue racing now that you're here? If you do, I'll start contacting some clubs for you right away. I stiffened, staring down at my legs. My eyes suddenly welled up, and tears began to fall one after another. Seeing me cry so suddenly, my mother panicked, thinking she had touched a sore spot, and quickly hugged me. I'm so sorry, Orion. If you don't want to, we don't have to. Okay. Mom, it's not that I don't want to race anymore. I told her everything. How Julian had pushed me from the platform, how Chloe had given the medicine to him. When I got to the part where the doctor announced I could never race again, I collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Even though so much time had passed, I still couldn't accept it. My mother was both furious and heartbroken. She comforted me for a long time, and only after I had cried myself to sleep did she quietly leave the room and make a call back to New York. Old friend, I need you to do something for me. After Chloe's pregnancy was announced, Julian moved into the Wilson house. He took meticulous care of her, giving her whatever she wanted and ensuring her meals were never the same twice. Under the diligent care of her family and Julian, Chloe's face began to fill out. The only issue was that although they had held a wedding ceremony, they had never signed the marriage license, so legally, they weren't husband and wife. Today was Mrs. Wilson's birthday, and no matter how much Chloe didn't want to, she had to go home. But when she arrived, instead of a lively celebration, she found everyone gathered in a circle, pointing and whispering. A sense of panic seized her, and she pushed her way through the crowd to see Mrs. Wilson desperately blocking the police from taking Julian away. After asking around, she learned the truth. My fall from the platform had been a deliberate act by Julian. I always used a camera to record my practice sessions so I could review the footage later. On the day of the fight, I was about to turn off the camera before Julian confronted me, but he pushed me before I could, and the entire incident was caught on tape. Even without the recording, plenty of people had witnessed it. My friends had wanted to report it to the police, but because of Chloe's involvement, the club's management stopped them. It wasn't until today, after a transatlantic phone call from DC, that the matter was brought to light again. At the same time, the story of Chloe giving the special medicine to Julian was also exposed. The series of scandals completely ruined the Wilson family's reputation. The lead police officer had a massive headache. Just then, a siren sounded from behind the crowd. Everyone turned to see a stern-faced, middle-aged man get out of a car and walk directly up to Chloe. The man produced a special warrant. Chloe Wilson, you're a person of interest in a conspiracy to cause bodily harm. You need to come with us. Without waiting for her consent, he gestured to his subordinates, who swarmed forward and escorted her into the car. Seeing this, Mrs. Wilson screamed and tried to intervene, but Mr. Wilson, having regained his composure, held her back. The man's position was far superior to his. He was someone their family could not afford to cross. Meanwhile, the police no longer hesitated, grabbing Julian and putting him in their car. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving behind a scene of chaos. Mrs. Wilson's legs gave out, and she collapsed. Mr. Wilson rushed to help her up, but her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. In the dim interrogation room, the man sat across from Chloe, holding a piece of paper and listing her transgressions one by one. The more she listened, the more familiar it sounded, as if he were describing all the things she had done to me. She had once asked Mrs. Wilson about my birth parents' identity, but they had always avoided the topic as if in fear. When the man mentioned that she had given the medicine to Julian, causing Ambassador Harrison's son, Orion, to be unable to race for the rest of his life, she finally confirmed that I was the ambassador's son. She tried to stand up, desperate to confirm this with the man in front of her, but the officers behind her held her down firmly. The man gave her a cold look and announced her punishment. Meanwhile, Julian's situation was even more dire than Chloe's. The investigation revealed that he had a history of intentionally harming people. Besides me, there were several others he had targeted and hurt. Although the Sterling family was powerful enough to protect him, he had committed too many crimes and, more importantly, angered the wrong person. They decided to cut their losses and abandon him. In the end, the Sterlings paid a hefty sum to the other victims to settle the matter. Furious, the Sterlings directed all their anger at Julian, disowning him and leaving him to fend for himself. Ultimately, it was Mrs. Wilson who stepped in and brought him back to their home. Before, Mrs. Wilson had been very fond of Julian. She thought he was gentle and sensible, and he was able to make her cold daughter smile. His visits always filled the house with laughter. But now, knowing the terrible things he had done, she couldn't even look at him without getting a headache. In the end, she moved him into the guest house, assigned a few maids to look after him, and instructed them to do nothing more than keep him alive. Just a short while ago, Julian had been the object of everyone's envy, but overnight, he had fallen from grace, becoming a villain that everyone shunned. He threw tantrums and raged against his fate, but the maids Mrs. Wilson sent paid him no mind. I'd advise you to give up. If it weren't for the baby in Ms. Wilson's belly, this family wouldn't be bothering with you at all. Julian thought of the child in Chloe's womb and finally calmed down. He had nothing left. The baby was his only hope. He had to ensure that Chloe gave birth to this child. With that thought, he stopped struggling and obediently finished the rest of his porridge. Meanwhile, in her room downstairs, ever since Chloe had been demoted with no clear date for reinstatement, she had been listless, often found slumped on the floor. Her legs would be stretched out, her arms hanging limply at her sides, and her once bright eyes were now dull and cloudy. A maid brought a large box into the room and placed it in front of Chloe. "Miss, the recycling center sent this back. They said it was what the young master threw away. The items were too valuable, so they didn't dare dispose of them and returned them untouched." Hearing that it was something I had thrown away, Chloe's dull eyes suddenly lit up. After I left, everything in my room had been discarded, including the family portraits. She had searched every corner of the house but couldn't find a single thing related to me. Chloe pulled the box towards her, but perhaps because she had been inactive for so long, her grip was unsteady. The cardboard tore, and the contents spilled out onto the floor. When she saw what was inside, her eyes widened in shock. It was filled with all the gifts she had ever given me. The small teddy bear in her hand was the welcome gift she gave me on my first day with the Wilsons. Back then, I was so terrified that I couldn't sleep at night. Chloe would sneak into my room, hold the bear, and tell me bedtime stories, saying the bear was an extension of her and would watch over me in her place. The leather shoes next to it were her first birthday gift to me, custom-made and imported from overseas. The rest of the boxes contained the birthday presents she had given me every year. At midnight on my birthday, as the clock struck 12, she would place a carefully prepared gift outside my door. She never missed a single year, until I turned 18, the year she discovered my diary and the secret it held. She never gave me another gift after that. Chloe looked at each item, the pain in her eyes growing more intense. I had kept all of them in perfect condition. If not for the slight yellowing of age, one might think they were brand new. With trembling hands, she reached out and caressed each gift. Suddenly, she saw something else and pulled a journal from the bottom of the pile. Seeing it covered in tape, she knew it was the diary she had torn to shreds. The boy who had always lovingly called her sis had suddenly started using her full name. She had assumed it was just me growing up and becoming more independent, so she hadn't thought much of it. It wasn't until Julian secretly stopped her and revealed my feelings for her that she realized I had been in love with her all along. At first, she was shocked, but that shock quickly turned to fear. I had confided my deepest secret to Julian, and Julian was notoriously bad at keeping secrets. If he ever let it slip, it wouldn't just be a disaster for me and her. The entire Wilson family would face a massive scandal. So, before it could be exposed, she decided she had to nip my feelings in the bud. She didn't even remember how she had stormed into my room or how she had torn up my diary. When she came to her senses, she saw my tear-streaked, heartbroken face. In that moment, she truly panicked. But then she remembered the contents of the diary, and her panic turned to rage. "From the very first day you came to this house, I have only ever seen you as a brother. How could you have these kinds of feelings for me? If you want to stay with this family, you will get rid of these ideas, or you'll create a scandal that will shame us all." Her hand caressed the broken journal. She could imagine how, after she left, I must have cried until I couldn't anymore, and then, exhausted, painstakingly taped the shredded pages back together. The pain must have been immense. The pages were wrinkled from dried tears. The teardrops had smudged the ink, making many words illegible, but she could still feel the intense love I once had for her radiating from the book. That's why I had been so persistent afterward, trying time and again to win her back. But she couldn't accept it. The disapproval from Mr. and Mrs. Wilson alone would have hurt me again. So, to completely sever my feelings for her, she decided to find someone to put on an act. When Julian learned of her plan, he volunteered. Seeing his frail state, she had felt a pang of pity for him. It was only later that she realized it had all been part of his scheme. Everything that followed fell into place. She and Julian grew closer, and the love in my eyes for her began to fade. The first time she stayed out all night for him, the day she held his hand and announced their engagement, and then their wedding, the love in my eyes vanished completely, replaced only by coldness and distance. That was all that was left after my heart had died. At the time, she had been so relieved, so glad that I had finally stopped loving her. But now, as she finally acknowledged her own belated love for me, the pain was unbearable. A bitter sorrow filled the room as she clutched the diary and wept. JFK Airport, New York. 6 months later, I set foot in the city again. When I left for DC, I thought I would never return. But unexpectedly, after just half a year, I was back. This time, I was here on behalf of my mother to attend her mentor's birthday celebration. My mother couldn't make it back due to work, so she sent me in her place. To ensure my safety, she also asked my cousin, Leo, to accompany me. Even though it had only been 6 months, looking at everything around me felt like a lifetime ago. Leo, on the other hand, was full of awe. He had grown up in the States and this was his first time here. Before we left, my mother had called another old friend in the city and asked her to take good care of us. So, after leaving the airport, we didn't go to a hotel but were picked up directly by the Bennett family. The Bennetts lived in a wealthy enclave on the Upper East Side, surrounded by other prominent families. And their home, where my mother's mentor lived, was not far from where I used to live. Seeing the familiar streetscape, I felt a momentary daze. I had walked this road countless times. When I was 6, the Wilsons brought me home along this very route. When I was 15 and training late, Chloe came to pick me up, and we took this road home. On her wedding day, I watched her motorcade drive down this road. And finally, when I left with my suitcase, I walked this same road to the airport. As I was lost in thought, a large hand suddenly waved in front of my face, snapping me back to reality. "What are you spacing out for?" "It's nothing." The car pulled smoothly into the Bennett's driveway, and as soon as we got out, Mrs. Bennett greeted us warmly. We quickly took out the gifts we had prepared and handed them to a nearby staff member. After some pleasantries, Mrs. Bennett showed us to our rooms. Both were on the ground floor, with glass doors that opened onto a beautiful view of the back garden. After settling in, we chatted with Mrs. Bennett for a while before taking our gifts and walking over to the Ford's house to visit my mother's mentor. Before we left, we told Mrs. Bennett not to save dinner for us. She nodded, reminded us to be safe, and watched us go. The walk from the Bennetts to the Fords wasn't far, but Leo was restless and kept pestering me to tell him stories about New York. Even though I had lived here for 15 years, my life had been a straight line between the club and the Wilson house. I rarely went anywhere else. Especially after Chloe discovered my feelings, I hardly ever went out, except for that one trip to the monastery in the mountains. Hearing that there was a monastery to visit, Leo started begging me to take him there sometime. Leo had always loved exploring. Back in DC, my mother kept an eye on him, but here he was like a monkey set loose. I couldn't stand his whining any longer, so I finally agreed. "After we attend Mr. Ford's birthday party, I'll take you." Leo, finally satisfied, let go of my arm. When we arrived at the Ford's house, the staff were already bustling about, preparing for the celebration. The butler saw us and warmly welcomed us inside. In the living room, I immediately spotted old Mr. Ford sitting on the sofa. I placed the gift we had prepared on the table. "Mr. Ford, on behalf of my parents, I wish you a long and joyful life. Leo and I also wish you eternal health and happiness." The string of good wishes made Mr. Ford laugh heartily. He patted the arm of the chair next to him and urged us to sit. "How have your parents been these past few years?" he asked with concern. "They're doing well, just unable to attend your party due to work. That's perfectly fine. It's the thought that counts. As for you, Alex, take them out for a walk and come back for dinner tonight. You young people should be out and about. I'm too old to move around much anymore." We chatted for a little longer before saying goodbye to the old man and heading out with his grandson, Alex Ford. The three of us had a great conversation on the way. At one point, Alex slapped his forehead. "I almost forgot. I booked a session at a racing club 2 weeks ago, just to try it out for fun. Orion, you used to race, right? Why don't you come check it out with me? If it's no good, I'll find another one." But at his words, both Leo and I stiffened. "What's wrong? We probably can't go. My cousin, he doesn't like going to racetracks anymore, for personal reasons." "Oh, no problem then, we won't go. You're the guests, and the most important thing is that you have a good time." With that, he told a nearby butler to cancel the appointment with the club and then led us toward a park in the other direction. At the racing club, Julian was supervising drivers on the simulator. Ever since the incident where he harmed me came to light, the club had suffered as well, with members leaving one after another for other clubs. With its reputation tarnished, fewer and fewer wealthy clients were joining. In the end, my old coach had to pull a lot of strings to attract potential investors. Just as everyone was training intensely, the coach walked in with a grim expression and clapped his hands. "What are you still practicing for? Everyone, Go home. Faced with his sudden outburst, the drivers exchanged confused glances. Even Julian, who had been sitting down, stood up. He slowly walked over to the coach. Why are we stopping all of a sudden? How should I know? The Fords just sent someone to say they're not coming. They're not investing in our club. His words were like a drop of water in a hot oil pan. The room erupted in discussion, and some drivers even started to cry in distress. They had been counting on that money to fund their training and competitions. Hearing the chorus of laments, Julian's face grew paler. He dug his nails into his palm and demanded, "Why? How should I know?" Julian didn't remember how he left. The harsh afternoon sun stung his eyes, but he felt nothing, numbly walking home until he ran right into Chloe, who was just about to leave. He asked instinctively, "Where are you going? What's it to you?" Chloe didn't care and started to walk past him. Mrs. Wilson had just received an invitation from the Fords for Mr. Ford's birthday gala. Chloe wasn't originally supposed to go, but she had overheard her mother mentioning that Ambassador Harrison's son would also be attending. After the incident at the police station, everyone knew that I was the ambassador's son. The thought of finally being able to see me again made her throw all caution to the wind. She was going to sneak over to the Fords and try her luck, hoping to run into me. "What do you mean, what's it to me? I'm your husband. We never signed the papers, and we never finished the ceremony. You are not my husband." With that, she walked away without another glance. Julian gritted his teeth and secretly followed her. He knew she was in such a hurry because she was going to see me. Alex Ford had taken Leo and me out for a long time, and we were all in high spirits when we returned. But just as we reached the gate, I saw a familiar figure. The moment I had completely given up on Chloe, I had decided I never wanted to see her again. I instinctively started to turn down another path, but her sharp eyes had already spotted me. "Orion," I sighed. It seemed I couldn't avoid her after all. I turned my head and gave her a cold look. Chloe instinctively moved to hug me but was blocked by the two men standing in front of me. In the past, she would have simply told them to get lost. But now, her status was no longer sufficient. Moreover, one of these men was Mr. Ford's grandson, someone she absolutely could not afford to offend. "What do you want with my cousin?" Leo had heard all about what Chloe had done to me. Before we came back, my mother had repeatedly warned him to be wary of the Wilsons, especially Chloe and Julian. Chloe was taken aback by the question. She opened her mouth, but what could she say? That she only realized her true feelings after I left and now wanted to win me back? As for Julian, she could get rid of him. They weren't legally married anyway. She swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on me behind them. After just 6 months, I looked much better than I ever had with the Wilsons. The eyes that had always been so dull were now shining. "Orion, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I always thought I didn't love you. But after you left, I realized you're the one I truly love. As for Julian, he was just a tool I used to push you away. So, can you please give me another chance?" She sounded like a wife who, after years of wrongdoing, was finally begging her husband for forgiveness. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't the kind of husband who would just take her back. Her words filled me with a bitter irony. "But didn't you say you only saw me as a brother? Didn't you say I shouldn't have those kinds of feelings for you, that it would bring shame to the Wilson family if we were exposed? You used Julian as a tool to drive me away, and I left just like you wanted. You're the one who caused all of this, and now you're the one who wants to take it all back. Chloe, you can't have it both ways." My words made Chloe's fingers tremble. Back then, her only goal had been to sever my feelings for her as quickly as possible, which was why she had said such cruel things without a second thought. I thought I was long past caring about what happened, but seeing her again, hearing her bring up the past, all those buried memories came rushing back. "Chloe, you're asking me for another chance, but why didn't you ever give me one? When we crashed in that ravine, when I begged you to give me the medicine to save my legs, why didn't you give me a chance? Why didn't you give me any hope?" By the end, I was shaking, tears of resentment and hatred streaming down my face. We had known each other for 15 years. She knew my legs were my life, but she still let the doctor give the medicine to Julian, who didn't even need it. I had nightmares for weeks after that. Hearing my outburst, Leo put a supportive hand on my arm. I shook my head and continued, "Chloe, after I went to DC, I did a lot of thinking. It's true, I was young and naive, and all I could think about was being with you, so I didn't consider the consequences. I understand if you hated me or resented me for that, but all I ever did was love you from afar. Why did you hate me so much that you had to take away my ability to ever race again? You kept saying you would take care of me. Do you really think I could believe that?" Chloe struggled to breathe, my words cutting into her like a sharp knife. She didn't know how to answer. At the time, she hadn't been aware of her own feelings. She only thought her actions would make me give up on her. She was about to marry Julian, and she didn't know his true nature. She thought that even if I couldn't work, she could easily support me, and that Julian wouldn't mind. Now, everything had changed, and she wouldn't dare say such things again. I glanced behind her and saw a figure cowering in the shadows. It was obviously Julian. Remembering that he was the one who had ultimately caused my injury, I let out a cold laugh and called out, "What are you doing hiding back there?" Chloe turned, and her face darkened. Julian had followed her. Go home. Julian was already upset after hearing what she'd said to me, and now, being yelled at, he dropped all pretense and stepped out. He tried to take Chloe's arm, but she quickly pulled away. Gritting her teeth, she looked back at me, her eyes scanning me up and down before settling on my legs. Our club was about to get sponsorship from the Fords, she said casually. Everything was going great, and then the coach suddenly came in and said the deal was off. Turns out, it's because you can't race anymore, so you couldn't stand to see the club succeed and had the Fords pull their funding. Orion, you're as selfish as ever. Shut up. Such fine manners from the Wilson family. What nonsense are you spouting? Chloe, forgetting his condition, slapped him hard across the face. Julian stumbled and fell, his face already red and swollen. If you don't know how to speak, then don't. No one will think you're mute. Chloe instinctively started to go after him, but Julian shoved her, sending her to the ground. Chloe, I'm your husband. How can you go trying to win someone else back? Chloe lay on the ground, blood pooling beneath her from her stomach. Only then did Julian remember she was pregnant. He frantically called an ambulance and got her to the hospital. When Mrs. Wilson heard the news and rushed to the hospital, she slapped Julian across the face, forgetting all her composure and swearing for the first time. Why do you have to go out and cause trouble? Mrs. Wilson had been at home when the butler burst in saying Chloe was in the hospital. Terrified that something had happened to Chloe and her grandchild, she rushed over, only to run into one of the Ford's staff at the entrance and learn what a stupid thing Julian had done. I was no longer the Wilsons' adopted son, but the son of an ambassador. The Wilson status had plummeted, and they couldn't afford to offend me. To make matters worse, the Ford's grandson had been right there when Julian was insulting me. The man who had come to arrest Chloe that day was Alex Ford's uncle. After confirming I was all right, Mrs. Wilson raised her hand and slapped him again, then turned and slapped Chloe as well. Do you know what your position is now? And do you know who Orion is now? How dare you still go looking for him? Chloe, after everything you've done, do you really think he would ever forgive you? Mom, I know what to do. You're going to be the death of me. Her words, instead of reassuring her mother, made Mrs. Wilson clutch at her heart. With that, Mrs. Wilson stormed out of the room without another look at them. Get rid of those foolish ideas. The baby is gone. There won't be a next time. For her, this miscarriage was a blessing in disguise. Now she was free of any burdens and could pursue me without a care in the world. Seeing the dark expression on Chloe's face, Julian gritted his teeth in fury. On the day of Mr. Ford's birthday celebration, the house was filled with guests. After presenting our gifts, Leo and I stood off to the side, quietly discussing our plan to visit the monastery. It gets a little cold in the mountains, so remember to wear something warm. They have simple vegetarian meals up there, so just bring some water and snacks. Okay. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. I looked up to see Chloe standing right in front of us. What are you doing here? Are you two going to the monastery in the Hudson Valley? I never knew you had a habit of eavesdropping. I couldn't be bothered with her and pulled Leo away. Chloe tried to follow, but someone else came to talk to her, and for the rest of the party, she never got another chance to speak to me. At the monastery in the mountains, the sky began to lighten, and the fog grew thicker. Dense white clouds of mist rose up, blanketing the entire path. Leo and I walked step by step along the stone path, slowly making our way toward the temple at the summit. In the distance, we could hear the faint sound of chanting and the long, drawn-out toll of a bell. Inside the monastery grounds, ancient trees reached for the sky, moss covered the stone slabs, and the wind rustled through the falling leaves. Bronze wind chimes hanging from the eaves trembled in the breeze. I took a deep breath and sat down on a stone bench in a corner, watching Leo explore like a curious child, looking at everything. It should have been a peaceful moment, but it was interrupted by Chloe's arrival. Can't get rid of her. That was the first thought that popped into my head when I saw her walking toward me. Orion, can we talk? I didn't want to talk to her, but then I thought about my return to DC. What if she followed me and kept pestering me? It was better to clear the air now. So I sat back down. Fine. What do you want to talk about? A flicker of joy crossed Chloe's eyes, and she was about to sit next to me, but I quickly stood up and walked away, stopping under a large Bodhi tree. Looking at Chloe, who had followed me, I said, I'm in a hurry, so say what you have to say. Chloe took a deep breath and poured out all the words she had been holding in for the past 6 months. She said she never loved Julian, that their relationship was just an act to make me give up. She claimed she had no idea Julian had hurt me, which was why she had chosen to save him first, as he was her fiancé at the time. She also said they only had the ceremony but never got legally married, that the baby was an accident her mother had wanted, and that it was gone now. She promised she would get rid of Julian immediately. In short, she wanted me to come back to her so we could be like we were before. For the first time, I took a long, hard look at the woman in front of me. She looked the same as she always had, but why did she seem like a complete stranger? Chloe, Regardless of your reasons for being with Julian, you genuinely hurt me. Julian would never have had the guts to do what he did without your silent permission. You were the one who first pushed me away, ignored me, and hurt me. He just followed your lead. Honestly, you two deserve each other. Chloe's face went pale. She never imagined I would say she and Julian were a good match. She didn't love him at all. In fact, after learning his true nature, she despised him. I didn't even look at her as I continued. You were the one who pushed me away and made me give up first. Yes, I used to love you because you were the first person to be kind to me after I came to the Wilsons. You were my entire youth. But when you pushed me away, I saw the rest of the world and realized my life didn't have to revolve around you. You and Julian did so many disgusting things, and now you think you can just say, let's start over, and make it all go away? That's impossible. Because of you two, I can never race again. As long as my legs still ache, I can never forgive you. Chloe, you're incredibly selfish sometimes. You pretend to be thinking of everyone else, but really, you're only thinking of yourself. You faked a relationship with Julian to push me away, and now you're claiming you never loved him just to win me back. In your world, we're all just tools for you to use. You promised you would always put me first, that you would never hurt me. Chloe, you were the one who broke that promise. Why should I be the one to forgive you? My words, one after another, made her slowly close her eyes. The words she wanted to say became impossibly difficult, and a bitter taste filled her mouth. She suddenly remembered that night long ago, when I was too scared to sleep, and she sat by my bed with the teddy bear, telling me a story. At the end, she placed the bear by my pillow and made a silent, firm promise. I will always protect you, just like this bear. I will never, ever hurt you. You will always be my #1 priority. You're just saying that. No, I'm not. Pinky promise. Okay, but if you ever do hurt me, I'll never speak to you again. A tear slid silently from the corner of her eye. Chloe opened her eyes again to look at me, but I was already walking down the mountain without a backward glance. Orion. I paused for a second but didn't turn around. Is there really no chance for us? I kept walking, disappearing from her sight. Chloe finally covered her face and began to sob. Chloe. The hatred and resentment in Julian's eyes were gone, replaced only by a profound sadness. He had done so many terrible things to climb the social ladder and win Chloe's hand, even losing the only true friend he ever had. After finally becoming the enviable son-in-law, he discovered that the woman he had given his heart to had always loved someone else. His eyes were filled with confusion and helplessness, and after hearing our conversation, he finally understood. Chloe didn't love anyone. She only cared about herself, and his 4 years of devotion had been for nothing, turning to dust and scattering in the wind. He knew that if he had any sense, he would leave Chloe and the Wilsons immediately. But the Sterlings had disowned him, and Mr. and Mrs. Wilson despised him. His only option was to cling to the woman in front of him. So he pushed aside his sorrow and looked at Chloe with hopeful eyes, reaching for her hand. Chloe, you still have me. Can't we just live a good life together? But just as I had done to her, Chloe walked away without even a glance in his direction. The last glimmer of hope in his heart was extinguished. He knew it was over. I waited at the airport for what felt like forever before I finally saw Leo rushing toward me. Where have you been? What took you so long? I just came from the hospital. Saw a real comedy. What comedy? Julian, in a fit of jealous rage, pushed Chloe down the mountain path, causing multiple fractures. Because help didn't arrive in time, both of her legs had to be amputated. As for Julian, he lost his footing and fell, crippling his own legs as well. When Mrs. Wilson heard, she fainted on the spot. Mr. Wilson ordered the butler to throw them both out after they're discharged and let them fend for themselves. But before they could even leave the hospital, they got into another fight and tumbled down a flight of stairs. Now they're both in a vegetative state. Are you happy? It has nothing to do with me. The plane is about to take off. I'm going to sleep. I didn't even bother to respond, just closed my eyes. The plane cut across the sky and disappeared into the clouds.